If you're a publisher and you want to push some new properties, you want to expand your audience, you want to build new books that you can do spin-offs and tie-ons and everything else, why has it become so hard? And why does it always feel so fake when publishers do that? Let's dig into it. Hey, there's this Perch. It's happened now. I think Marvel's had a bad run where they've wanted to push new properties and they've wanted to get some new ideas out there. And they used to be very good at this. They used to be pretty solid track record of, putting out a new comic and pushing a new property and getting some interest. It didn't always take long term. And sometimes it took a while to grow. Like Deadpool, a lot of people, would be surprised, I think, at this point. But Deadpool was kind of a slow burn character for a while, and then it grew and grew and grew. And character became more of a fan favorite, more of a fan favorite. But it wasn't like that from the very beginning. But still, that kind of magic was there. It didn't. Nobody was saying, Marvel's trying to force Deadpool. There wasn't that kind of backlash to the character. But in recent years, they've struggled a lot, and I think in turn, so is DC in pushing new ideas, and not just that they didn't take off, but that there was a kind of a fan backlash, and there's kind of a feeling like the publisher was trying to kind of put one over on you, the customer, or wasn't listening to you, the customer. And the biggest example is, I think there's been a few, but in Marvel's case, there's been kind of two right in a row. And one was certainly the kind of inorganic hype of Captain Marvel, and in turn kind of Miss Marvel and some of these other things. And the other was the Inhumans property. And over in DC, the New Age of Heroes kind of had this feeling of it, as well as sort of, I think we're going through it now, the Bendis wave of Bendis properties and Bendis as a creator. So looking at each one really quickly. So with Captain Marvel, and there may be a correlation here as I walk through all these things. See if you can detect a common thread. With Captain Marvel, there was a Brian Reed written comic that was fairly solid, got reasonable numbers, higher numbers than sales numbers than you have today. And it was Miss Marvel. She's in her old costume, and by old costume I mean the one that showed a lot of butt. And she was, it was like a solid middle low tier title. And then House of M hit. And with House of M and with the aftermath of we'll start with House of M. So House of M hit, and one of the things they did was they wanted to show Carol kind of without the hangups, being kind of a really popular superhero. And the idea was that House of M, the mutants were, dominant species, but Captain Marvel was a non-mutant, but still really popular kind of hero. And when House of M ended, she retained her memories, and she basically got a chance to see, hey, you're not living up to your full potential. And they ran with that kind of, a little bit. She kind of vowed to do more and be stronger and other things. And then Secret Invasion hit, and the Civil War hit first, I should say, of course. And Captain Marvel, as Bendis was kind of running the Avengers titles, Captain Marvel was elevated to be kind of the field leader and key person on the Mighty Avengers team. And then, somebody decided, hey, having her butt hanging out isn't a good idea. So they did the new full costume, full, show little skin costume. And all of these things kind of went on, and Captain Marvel didn't really change in the eyes of the fans. It was, and the readers, I should say, the people who were actually buying the comics. There was certainly a vocal group of people like Captain Marvel, the Carol Corps, and there was interest in the character, but not strong interest. The title kind of remained a middle low tier title selling wise. And then the oddball thing was that they suddenly decided Captain Marvel was super popular in the comics, meaning they're going to start writing the comics as if all the girls and all the the little girls and the characters just loved Captain Marvel. And so they started doing these stories around, Captain Marvel's one of the most popular superheroes of all time in the comics. And then, there's now several years have gone by. They get to Civil War II, and it's Carol against Tony. And they, the series just had so many odd things going on. This is kind of Bendis's last hurrah, if you will, in the Marvel world. Not only did Carol was she written to be very authoritarian. Um, it's in a pre-Trump world, it was interesting that they basically wrote Carol to be very very Trump-like. She was she was very nationalist, very all the rest. There was man, I pissed off both sides all at once by comparing Captain Marvel to Trump. Ah, well. Anyway, one of the outcomes of that was she was very authoritarian, very kind of almost a fascist dictatorship, and then she basically puts Tony into a coma, and at the end of that, they kind of super double down by saying Carol is the most popular character in the entire world, and this is what her comic series is about. And it seemed like the more Marvel pushed it, the lower her sales got. And now we have the movie, and there's more Captain Marvel attention out there, but it's kind of in terms of people coming in buying comics. It's not as people will speculate. It's not a bunch of kind of women hating men going to a comic store buying comics. It's just people who don't want to feel like they're being force fed something, and that's how the Carol build felt. It was more of a, people who are comic buyers historically, they want to be shown, not told. It's show me, don't tell me. And they felt like, we didn't get shown amazing Captain Marvel adventures that really caused us to fall in love with the character. We were told that she is the most popular and everybody loves her, and if you don't, you're weird. And that's kind of how the build of Captain Marvel went. And so, as in the comics, the character was written to be just the most popular hero of all time over and over and over. And in fact, there's even a comic that was really just not painful, but just you could tell they're on the wrong track, where they're Captain America is basically talking to Captain Marvel, going, "Well, you're more popular than I am." It's like, no, come on, come, just stop with that. I think Spider-Man actually had a similar line in the comic, like, "Well, we can't all be popular like Captain Marvel." It's like, what? Anyway. So that was one. The second one, as I mentioned, with Marvel, is the whole Inhumans situation, and that was another one where Marvel as a company is like, "Hey, you know what's really cool? Inhumans," and this spun out of Infinity. Is that what it was? Infinity, yeah. The Hickman kind of big crossover storyline with Avengers, New Avengers. But one of the consequences of that line was that it was going to set off Terrigen myths around the world, and Inhumans would there be suddenly a lot more of them, and this would be an opportunity for new heroes, new faces, and Inhumans. You got to buy them. There's like 3 Inhumans books coming out all at once. And then we had a bunch of solo titles and a Karnak title and all that, and just Marvel just start just spraying Inhuman comics just right in the face of the buyers. And the more they did, the lower they sold. And it's funny because pre this whole Inhumans boom, there were a decent amount of people, I think, who were pretty big Inhumans fans. They liked Black Bolt, they liked those characters, they liked the royal family, they thought they were kind of cool. They carried some weight to them. When they'd show up as guest stars, there was a sense of like, oh, these are important characters. People liked them. And then they went through and they combed them for kind of the masses. They changed up Karnak and made him more of a, they changed up the character, and then they just pumped out titles like mad. And one of those titles worked in the sense of Miss Marvel worked. And Miss Marvel worked. It was interesting because that book came out. There's a few people, not more than a few people, but still pretty minority group of people who were like, how dare Marvel make a book with a Muslim in it? There's always going to be somebody who's just going to bitch about everything. But anyway, so that didn't go anywhere. And then the comic itself was unique. The art style, and I think a lot of people forget about the art style, but the art style, the coloring, and the writing was something different. And there wasn't this big everybody's got to love Kamala. There's just not that gigantic Marvel inorganic push for Kamala Khan Miss Marvel right away. So the book actually just got popular, grew. And then as Marvel seemed to be like, hey, some people are buying this, then they started just once again ramming it down people's throats, and the popularity started to dip. We saw, and let's relaunch the title a few times. Let's make Kamala like, oh, and all the other people love her. I think that whenever in comics the comic is written to basically force you to like something. Like this character is popular, is the best, everybody knows it, and you just have to get on board. I think there's this natural reaction from people in general, but particularly comic fans who for a long time have been the outliers. So for many years, if you were into comics, this was not the cool thing. You were more, you're into comics, alternative music, and Depeche Mode and Cure. Well, I mean, yeah, if you lived like 30 years ago, that was you. But you're kind of you're not the mainstream. Comics were not the mainstream. So I guess the point. And so I think it's kind of natural. Maybe the writers today have forgotten about this, but the people who are not the mainstream don't like being told what to buy. And that was kind of Marvel's failure. And I mentioned DC. I think the New Age of Heroes had kind of a similar reaction to it. It was, here are some new comics that are written by top creators, and there's kind of the 1-2 punch of death for most of those titles. The first was, and the biggest, look, some of some of DC's top talent: Scott Snyder, Jim Lee. Look at all the Kenneth Rockford. Look at all the people who are on these titles. And then by issue like 2 or 3, or in Jim Lee's case, like issue 1, the big name creators kind of take a step out, and then like, hey, here comes the next team, and it's a very Marvel move of launching a new #1 title, and then just a couple issues into it, just flipping the creative team to a more unknown team. And but along with that too was you've got to get on board with this comic. And once again, there's some people who like them. The Terrifics had a good run where there's a feeling of people who liked the elements that were coming together. But in most cases, it's like, you don't tell me what to buy. You're not the boss of me, Marvel and DC. And so it those things struggle. And I think the last one, and maybe where this all ties together a little bit, is the whole Bendis is coming. I wouldn't have run ads like that, because it almost was like laying down a challenge to comic fans, comic readers, to say, you're gonna buy this, damn it. When Bendis is coming, and he's gonna do comics, and he's gonna do a bunch of comics, and he's gonna do all the comics, and you are gonna buy it, and you're gonna love it, and you're gonna shut up and like it. And that was it. The ads were meant to be fun. The ads were meant to be kind of an homage to Kirby, when the Kirby was coming back way back in the day. They did a similar thing. So it was kind of the same, like, we've got a big name and he's going to do big things. And that's all cool. But once again, if there's a fine line between kind of getting excited and promoting and hyping, and kind of beating somebody over the head and saying, you're going to buy this, you're going to love it. And inside the shop, that's exactly the reaction that we got. It was here's a title, you're going to like it. And the fans are coming in and going, I don't like it. And it's a tougher bar to climb. I think, have you ever heard the analogy, if you go into a movie expecting it's going to suck, and then the movie is just okay, you think, man, that was an amazing movie. Your expectations set low, and coming in above those low expectations, it's like, wow, this is incredible. I remember thinking that over Blades of Glory, the Will Ferrell film where he's a ice skater, and I went into that movie like, this is going to be complete garbage, and I left going, wow, this is one of the best comedies of all time. It's amazing. And then I watched it, like, I'm hyping this movie up to my friends, and then I watch it like a couple months later, and I'm like, oh, this movie was there's some funny bits in it, but this movie's kind of stupid. And it was because when you lower your expectations so far and then you come in just above those, hey, it's a great experience. Well, the opposite is also true. If you raise this bar, if you're like, this is going to be the best comic of all time, somewhere in your brain, some little voice in your brain starts going, oh yeah, we'll see about that. Let's just, okay, I accept this challenge. Let's see. and that's where the two things collide, and bad stuff happens. But anyway, that's my little bit. It's I think as a publisher, you gotta be able to market, you gotta be able to hype in a way that's not gonna have the opposite effect. And it feels like some magic has been lost at the big two, because they're hyping and they're pumping stuff out, and I cringe when I see some of the ads now. It's like, don't do this, don't go all in like this, because you're daring the fan base to ignore it, and that's what they do. Anyway, what do you think about all of it? Let me know your feedback, your comments. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notification, tell a friend, share with a friend. All good. And follow me on Twitter, Comic Perch. Thanks for listening.